Welcome back to the Flying with the Flock podcast, the best place to get all of your Eagles and NFL related news. I'm your host, Matt, and today is Mock Draft 2.0 day with a lot of different moves happening between the last mock draft, the 1.0 that I did, and now. We're going to be able to have a better picture to see where teams are most likely heading in the draft, although these things are never certain. I would bet money that a lot of these might be locks at this point, and we'll get into that in a little bit. So I'm going to dissect what I believe each team will do. This one, compared to my last mock draft, will have trades. So there might be a couple of those that we might see, but it's not going to be anything wild. I'm not going to have anybody being trading for the number one overall pick or anything like that. Rather, a couple different pick swaps that we might see. I also will not be getting into in-depth what the teams will be giving up to move up in the draft or what other teams are getting to move back in the draft. So that will not be the case. Rather, I'm just going to talk about where they will land, in my opinion, and who they will take at that certain pick. But before we get started with that, I just want to ask you guys to leave a like and subscribe down below. That would be much appreciated before we get too deep into this. It's really a dry season right now. I mean, there's only one piece of news that has really happened, and we'll touch on this once we get to the New York Giants, but they've signed like two pretty decent quarterbacks. Well, Jameis Winston's decent. Russell Wilson, that's a completely different story. But, yeah, we can get into that once we hit to the Giants pick, which really does impact who I believe they're going to try to take. Yeah, there hasn't really been too big of news, whether it's from the Eagles or whether it's from another team around the league. It's very dry right now. Again, we're still a month out from, well, what is today's date? Yeah, we're about a little less than a month away from the first day of the draft. I believe that's April 24th. Today is March 26th. So we're a month out. And then we're a month or so out from like mini camp and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a bit of a dry season, unfortunately. Unfortunately for all football fans, and unfortunately for me talking about it. So that's why we're just going to stick with the mock draft today. All right. So let's get this party started, and let's talk about the team that I believe is going to stick with the number one overall pick, that being the Tennessee Titans. As this offseason goes further and further on, I do feel like the Titans are less and less likely to trade this number one overall pick, and they're going to stick at number one. Obviously, their biggest need and probably one of the more talented prospects in the draft, that being Cam Ward. It seems like they're really doing their due diligence on not researching him, but like studying him, going to his pro day. They're hosting him for a private pro day at the Titans facility, stuff like that. Does he have the right mindset to win the league? Yes. Does he have the talent? His accuracy is almost second to none. I haven't seen this from a draft prospect in a while. He does have to fix a lot of basic mechanic stuff, and he needs to play less lackadaisical, especially if you saw him during the Pop-Tart Bowl, which is really funny for me to say that the Pop-Tart Bowl even exists, and that the number one overall pick was in it. His footwork was so lackadaisical. At points, he was walking around the pocket. That's not going to be the same if he goes to this Titans squad here. So I do feel like that he's going to have his work cut out for him. But as the number one overall pick, I do believe he might be the most talented quarterback in this draft. Does that mean he's ultimately going to be the best quarterback in 2-3 years from this draft? No. Because if you look at it, Jalen Hurts was the fifth quarterback picked in the 2020 draft. And so far, he's the most accomplished and arguably probably the best out of all 5 of those quarterbacks. So this doesn't mean that Cam Ward is going to be like the second coming of Christ here. Rather, he's a really good pick at a position that the Titans need, as long as they can bring in some veteran depth to pair with Cam Ward in that quarterback's room. I feel like everything might be a little bit smoother than we anticipate. I could also see the Titans trading back up into the first round for a offensive lineman, but so far they've secured both tackle positions, which is enough to try to keep your rookie quarterback alive. So at the number 1 overall pick, I have Cam Ward going to the Tennessee Titans. All right. So we are up with the second overall pick, that being the Cleveland Browns. Browns are in a very fortunate situation. They have a lot of talented players that they can pick at this top position. Originally, I had them taking most likely Abdul Carter at this position. He's probably, to me, he's the best prospect. Obviously, Cam Ward was the best quarterback prospect and one of the top prospects in this entire draft. But Abdul Carter is the top prospect. But weirdly enough, I don't really see him going to the Browns. The Browns have a lot of different positions of need. Quarterback, they have corner, they have wide receiver, running back, offensive lineman. Defensive lineman's all right. As long as you got Myles Garrett on there, it's really hard to stop that defensive line. So who do I have them taking? I have them taking probably the most unique prospect we've seen in quite a long time in the NFL. A player that can play both wide receiver and corner. I believe he could probably play corner at a very high level, with certain packages playing wide receiver. Obviously, for those who know a little bit of college football and know football in general, you know who I'm talking about, that being Colorado's Travis Hunter, the Heisman winner. Originally, I did have him sliding a little bit, but with how unique he is and with how he can almost fit two of the Browns' dire needs right now, especially with Denzel Ward still requesting a trade out of Cleveland and Amari Cooper leaving a sizable hole at the wide receiver position. I wouldn't be surprised if the Browns try to tackle two of their major problems by taking Travis Hunter and praying for the best. Do I believe Travis Hunter can play at a high level at both positions? Yes. But I just want to see how the Browns use him and hopefully do not run him into the ground. All right, next up you have the third overall pick, that being the New York Giants, who signed Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston over the past 3 days. So, which tells me they are not going quarterback here. Originally, I would have had them if they just signed Jameis Winston or Russell Wilson. I probably still would have taken Shedeur Sanders here at pick number 3. But I do believe that with these two moves, it shows that they know that both Cam Ward is not going to fall to pick number 3, and that Shedeur Sanders probably isn't a top 3 prospect here, which makes sense. There are definitely some question marks for for Shedeur Sanders, which we'll get into when he gets picked here. But I wouldn't be surprised if they take offensive linemen here. A lot of people have them taking Armand M'Bu, offensive tackle from Missouri. He's recently shot up a lot of different draft boards, and although I do not believe that he's the top offensive tackle prospect, I wouldn't be surprised, knowing the Giants and their track record, especially when they have a top 5 pick or a draft pick in general, is that they're going to shoot for a guy that might not work out but could have a lot of upside. So I wouldn't be surprised if Armand M'Bu gets taken before Will Campbell, even though I don't believe that that's the entirely right move here. So with the third overall pick, we have the New York Giants selecting Armand M'Bu. Next up, we have the New England Patriots. The New England Patriots, this is kind of a no-brainer. We have arguably my favorite prospect of the entire draft falling to 4 when he could have even went 1, that being Abdul Carter. He fits the mentality that Mike Vrabel is looking for over at New England. He's a real physical, get after the quarterback kind of pass rusher, and he plays with a lot of fire. He's been described as being like Myles Garrett plus who's the other? Reggie White, something like that. Taking 2 of the best. Aaron Donald, I feel like, was probably thrown in there as well. You're hearing a lot of guys compare him to these legendary pass rushers, and although I want to see it translate over to the NFL, I could totally believe that Abdul Carter could be like the next great edge rusher in the NFL. Do I believe he'll be the best defensive lineman? No, especially with Jalen Carter being being in the league anyway. So I do believe Abdul Carter will ultimately fall to the Patriots here at number 4, which will honestly be a steal, especially with an edge rusher being one of their top needs in the draft. And although they have the pick to deal with wide receiver, which is another big need, or offensive tackle, which is another very big need, and although I could really see them going Will Campbell here, I wouldn't be surprised if they take probably the best prospect in the entire draft, that being Abdul Carter. So, with the number 4 overall pick, we have the New England Patriots selecting Abdul Carter, edge out of Penn State. All right, next up, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars sitting at number 5. Again, another very interesting team. They have quite a few needs. They have offensive line needs. They have secondary. And although I definitely could have seen if Travis Hunter falls to 5, I could see the Jaguars pouncing on the opportunity of getting their hands on Travis Hunter. And maybe they trade up. Who knows? Maybe they trade up to number 2 or they trade up to number 3 and try to play some mind games with the Browns. I do feel like they probably take the best available player on the board, that being Mason Graham, defensive tackle out of Michigan. Mason Graham plays a really solid game. He's a really good pass rusher. I forget how good he is on the run stopping, but he's able to get after the quarterback. If you pair him with a Josh Hines Allen and a Trayvon Walker, that might be a solid 3 peas in a pod right there for a defensive line, and it'll also bring another person that the offensive line and offense as a whole are going to have to key in on to try to stop in order to keep him from wrecking their entire game. So, with the number 5 overall pick, I have the Jacksonville Jaguars taking the best player available to them, that being Mason Graham, defensive tackle out of Michigan. Alright, so next up we have the Las Vegas Raiders picking at number 6. And obviously, if this was before the Geno Smith trade, I would have had them taking quarterback here. But after that, they seem to have plenty of weapons. They have, we're about to get at what weapon they're going to take. But they seem to have the right quarterback, the right coach, a solid defensive mentality that they're going to be able to build around. But where do they go? I wouldn't be surprised if we see the Raiders take on, honestly, my personal opinion, who should have won the Heisman, that being Ashton Jeanty, running back from Boise State. He plays with a lot of amazing mentality. He's very slippery as a runner. You have to get multiple bodies on him to tackle. Now, whether that will be able to translate over to the NFL, that's an entire different thing. But I do feel like he might be the best weapon available for the Raiders at this moment. And with the lack of depth and talent at the running back position on their team, this is honestly a no-brainer for me. Although they could take probably the best player available, that being like an offensive tackle, I do feel like Ashton Jeanty is probably the best possible option for the Raiders, sitting at number 6 right now. So, with the number 6 overall pick, and also, let's just say this, historically, Pete Carroll, if you give him a running back, he's gonna, and especially a running back that can break tackles and feel like very slippery as a runner, he's going to go to the Super Bowl. So, with the number 6 overall pick, I have the Las Vegas Raiders taking Ashton Jeanty, running back from Boise State. All right, so next up we have the New York Jets, and obviously they have a few positions of need, but to me, I do feel like they probably take one of the better players still available at this point. That being Will Campbell. They need offensive line. That was definitely proven, especially last year, especially early on last year, with Aaron Rodgers constantly getting sacked. Eventually, they were able to find some form of rhythm, but that didn't stop too much pressure as a whole. I do feel like Will Campbell is the best offensive tackle in the draft right now. And although he didn't go as the first offensive tackle, I do feel like he's still the most talented and most well-rounded offensive tackle in this draft. The Jets need that position. They're looking to build in the trenches, especially under Aaron Glenn. He saw what happened in Detroit once they started to build in the trenches, so I wouldn't be surprised if he tries to copy that same idea here. So give me Will Campbell going to the New York Jets at pick number 7. Next up, we have the Carolina Panthers. Panthers need corner, they need offensive line, they need defensive line, they need wide receiver. I feel like they probably sit here and take the best player available, that being Michigan corner Will Johnson here. Will Johnson, obviously, a lot of people make the argument that he's the top corner in the draft, and although there is an argument to be made there, Travis Hunter still exists, and you cannot deny that he's probably the best corner right now. So Will Johnson just slides a little bit further down than probably he would hope personally. I do see the Panthers taking him here, pairing him up with Jaycee Horn, who just got a 3-year, $100 million deal. So bringing in Jaycee Horn, I believe that's an extension on his rookie contract, which he's still on, which he has like one more year or something. So that being like 4 years of Will Johnson and Jaycee Horn will be a solid corner duo here down in Carolina. So with the number 8 overall pick, I have the Carolina Panthers taking Will Johnson, corner out of Michigan. All right, next up. This is a really interesting situation here because I could definitely see like a team or two trading up with the Saints here, but I'm going to have the Saints staying put. They have quite a few needs that they need to deal with. But I do feel like they go after an edge rusher, especially with players like Cam Jordan getting older. And his production hasn't gone down yet, but he will hit that point where he stops producing the same amount. And the Saints are going to have to bring in somebody to not compete with him, but run alongside him, maybe learn the ropes a little bit. So I could see them taking a shot at a guy that had a really stellar combine, that being edge rusher out of Texas A&M, that being Shamar Stewart. Originally I had Shamar Stewart going like late first round, but especially after this combine, I do feel like he's elevated his worth, especially in the eyes of a lot of these top picking teams. They can bring in a guy that put up pretty good numbers and a guy that can get after the quarterback which is a area of need for the Saints currently. Could I see them going offense with some pick? Yes, but I do also feel like the Saints are going to try to shore up a little bit more defense and continue to build the offense over the next couple of years. All right, next up we have the Chicago Bears. I do feel like the Bears trade this pick. I feel like they trade the pick with a team that needs an offensive weapon, and I do feel like, this team, without me giving it away because it hasn't gone through yet. Hold on. Proposed trade. Hold on. Give me 1 sec. This is a little bit janky, but we're doing it. Got bang, bang. First next year. And a lot of just late round. Also, I'll give them we'll do that. Alright, so there we go. I got it fixed. Alright, so I have the Denver Broncos trading up to pick number 10 to take an offensive weapon. There's a few people that they could take looking at the positions that they would most likely need. They need a lot of different weapons positions. I feel like wide receiver they're a little bit more sure on. I do feel like, so I don't have them taking McMillan out of Arizona at this pick. Rather, I have the Broncos taking a swing at probably one of the more physical talents out of this draft, that being tight end Tyler Warren out of Penn State. I wouldn't be surprised if Tyler Warren maybe even goes earlier than this, but if the Broncos see him slide to this and they're able to get a solid deal done with the Bears where it's fair, I could see them trading up to number 10 and trying to take Tyler Warren. Obviously, when I do picks like this, it makes and it doesn't happen, it makes me look a little bit silly, but I could totally see them taking a offensive weapon, and I just have them trying to jump up and trying to take the best guy available at this point. All right, the San Francisco 49ers. They need a lot of help and a lot of defensive help. They need defensive tackle. They need defensive edge. They need linebacker. They need corners. So what do? I feel like they probably take one of the better edge pieces available, that being James Pierce Jr. out of Tennessee. I really hope that he falls to the Eagles, but I know he isn't going to fall as far as I have the Eagles being in this mock draft. I do feel like James Pierce Jr. is the second best edge prospect after Abdul Carter, and although I don't have him going before Shamir Stewart, I wouldn't be surprised if we see another team try to take him earlier. But with how things fall here, I do have the 49ers taking James Pierce Jr. at pick number 11 to fill a defensive need that they need badly. And they can also pair him alongside Nick Bosa as well, which is always nice to have a good edge rushing tandem there. Cowboys, they have a lot of needs. They have offensive line need. They have defensive line need. They maybe need a wide receiver. So I have them taking probably... So they had a Hall of Fame right guard just retire, that being Zach Martin. So I do feel like they try to fill that hole in the middle of that offensive line with taking a little bit early. I didn't have Tyler Booker going this early before. I do feel like the Cowboys have to make a move in the center of their offensive line to try to shore it up. So I have them taking offensive guard out of Alabama, Tyler Booker, to try to shore up this middle of the line. I mean, he's a big boy. He's 6'4", 320 pounds. I wouldn't be surprised if... Not that this is a bust or anything. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a little bit of a stretch for the Cowboys. But they have to shore up their offensive line to give Dak the time to throw the ball. And there'll definitely be weapons later on in the second and third round that they can take shots on, that they don't have to risk a high round draft pick here and miss on another guy. So with the number 12 overall pick, I have the Dallas Cowboys taking offensive guard Tyler Booker from Alabama. All right, next up we have the Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins need some decent amount of help. I do feel like they need a lot of O-line, D-line help, and especially seeing how the Eagles won the Super Bowl off of offensive lineman play and defensive lineman play. I wouldn't be surprised if they take the best defense, or actually the best offensive lineman available. They need help at the tackle position there, and I don't believe their starting tackles are really getting it done, especially for Tua. They need more protection for him currently, so I have them taking the best offensive tackle available, that being Kelvin Banks Jr., offensive tackle out of Texas. Looking at the sheer size of this guy, he's 6'5", 315 pounds. He plays. He's very determined. He plays a very solid game here, very well-rounded, but also very good at the passing as a pass offensive tackle. So I do have the Dolphins taking Kelvin Banks Jr. here just to try to shore up more of this offensive line to give Tua and Tyreek one last year with more time in the pocket to deliver a pass. So with the number 13 overall pick, I have the Miami Dolphins taking Kelvin Banks Jr., offensive tackle out of Texas. Next up, we have the Colts here. They have quite a few needs: offensive line, tight end, but where I think they address here is most likely at the linebacker position, with linebacker Jalen Walker out of Georgia sitting here as the top-rated defensive tackle. Obviously, as an Eagles fan, I will say any Georgia player, especially on defense, is the best idea if you don't know where to go and they're still sitting on the board. They're determined, they're gritty. Watching him play a little bit, he's able to get to the pass. He's able to get to the quarterback a little bit, but also still play a solid zone coverage in the middle of the field. He seems like a solid guy that you'd be able to trust, and especially with the Colts losing a couple pieces at the linebacker position and a few of those pieces also aging out, I wouldn't be surprised if they try to bring back some youth to this defense and try to start rebuilding this defense long term to be a top tier defense. But that all starts at building around the center of the field. So with the number 14 overall pick, I have the Indianapolis Colts taking Jalen Walker, linebacker out of Georgia. All right. So I do have the... Actually, no, we'll wait for that later. I have the Atlanta Falcons picking at number 15. They need corner, defensive tackle. They need all defense. It's essentially what they need. So they need to take the best defensive player available on the board. To me, that is Mekhi Williams, edge out of Georgia. Two Georgia boys going back-to-back. Again, what I just said about Jalen Walker, a Georgia player. He knows about how to win. He plays physical. And please, dear God, Atlanta Falcons, take a defensive edge who is under the age of 32. Please. You guys sign guys like Calais Campbell, Matthew Judon, and these guys, although they are great, they are old, and you cannot build your defense around these older pieces. Sure, you can throw a bag at somebody and hope that they do something, but if they're over the age of 32 and they're playing edge, their production may not be as high as they were in their late 20s. So bringing in some fresh youth here at the defensive edge position with Mekhi Williams will be the right step in the in this draft, and then they can continue to build on the defense throughout their next coming picks. All right, next up we have the Arizona Cardinals. I wouldn't be surprised if they go defensive tackle here, with taking the best defensive tackle on the board, that being Derek Harmon, defensive tackle out of Oregon. They need to shore up this defensive line. We all know Jonathan Gannon loves to have a good defensive line that can pass rush a quarterback. He's been lacking that over the last few years, or last 2 years that he's been the head coach there. Obviously, bringing in Josh Sweat to be their number one guy on that defensive line, but bringing in another target to help apply pressure to this offense. I wouldn't be surprised if we see them take another defensive lineman in the first round. So I have them taking the best guy to anchor the middle of this defensive line, that being Derek Harmon, defensive tackle out of Oregon. Next up, we have the Cincinnati Bengals. Cincinnati needs defense, and a lot of it, especially defensive line, especially with what's his face, who's still holding out over there. I'm blanking on his name. Trey Hendrickson is still holding out. I wouldn't be surprised if we see another defensive lineman go. Them take take a shot on a guy here. I wouldn't be surprised if they take like their best defensive edge available. And although this could be a little bit of a stretch here, I could see them taking Nick Scorton, edge out of Texas A&M here. He's a solid guy. He was a running mate with Shamir Stewart. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Bengals try to shore up this defensive line. They could go defensive tackle. They could go the best defensive player available, but they have to address this defensive line, especially with the possibility that Trey Hendrickson will not be returning next year, which is still a possibility. We'll see. But that being said, the Cincinnati Bengals take the best edge rusher available at number 17, that being Nick Scorton, edge out of Texas A&M. All right. Seattle, you guys need offensive line help, like, desperately. I could see you guys trading up in the draft to try to get a guy, but taking the best offensive lineman available, that being Josh Simmons, offensive tackle out of Ohio State. I mean, Geno Smith elevated your offense by knowing how to work a bad offensive line. So you guys need to address that, because Sam Darnold, if he's constantly blitzed, he's going to fade quickly. You guys have to find a way to upgrade your offensive line. I mean, you guys lost even more pieces on that offensive line. So I would love to see them take a shot at a guy like Josh Simmons. But please, dear God, for Sam Darnold's sake, so he doesn't start seeing ghosts again, please bring in a guy like Josh Simmons in order to secure the tackle position on your offensive line. So, with the number 18 overall pick, I have the Seattle Seahawks taking Josh Simmons, offensive tackle out of Ohio State. Next up, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa is sitting at an interesting position. They need a lot of defensive help if they can get it, with a lot of their stars aging. I do feel like they have to take corner or safety here. And with the top corner available, I'm not too highly rated on him right now. I do feel like they probably take safety. They take the best available safety, in my opinion, that being safety from South Carolina, Nick Emmanworiye. He's a solid player. He can get he can play solid deep zone coverage. He can go man sometimes, and sometimes he can even go after the quarterback. He's an all-around solid player, and he's a safe bet to pair across with Antoine Winfield Jr. and try to help elevate this secondary. Could I also see them taking corner? I could definitely see them taking the best corner available, that being a Jaheed Barron, corner out of Texas. But I feel like they go with the safer pick and the player that is more proven at this point, that being Nick Emenwariye. All right, number 20. Who do I have the Chicago Bears taking? A guy that's really, especially again from the combine, whose numbers have really impressed a lot of different teams around the league. I have the Bears picking Omarion Hampton, running back from North Carolina. I wouldn't be surprised, because if you look at that, although I do feel like they've addressed the offensive line enough, depth wouldn't hurt here, and a younger guy wouldn't hurt here to bring in competition for their two tackles. I do feel like a lot of this Ben Johnson offense is based off of play action, so you have to fear the running back, and nobody's going to fear DeAndre Swift. As decent as he was with the Eagles, he was worse with the Bears, in my opinion, and I do feel like with this new offense, Ben Johnson is going to want a guy that he's going to be able to mold into not a Jahmyr Gibbs, but mold into a running back that defenses can fear, can slice him up, and then also rely on the play-action pass from Caleb Williams. So I originally had them taking Ashton Jeanty last mock draft, but I do feel like Ashton Jeanty doesn't fall to them anymore. So with the number 20th overall pick that they received with the trade from the Denver Broncos, the Chicago Bears select running back Omarion Hampton from North Carolina. All right, so I do believe that before we get into the Steelers, I do believe Aaron Rodgers goes to the Steelers. But how does that impact their pick? They could go D-line here. I wouldn't hate if they go defensive line here and try to shore up a position which is aging. They could shore up edge, which is another position that is aging. Could they take a Jahad Campbell? I definitely could see them taking a Jahad Campbell if this guy that I have them taking doesn't slide all this way, which is weird that he has, but it's just how the cards have played. Could a team trade up and try to get him? Yes. Am I that high on him? No. Am I high on any of these quarterbacks in this draft? No. But I have the Steelers taking Shedeur Sanders at pick number 21. This is my biggest, weirdest one, but I just don't see any team between, you could argue the Browns, and I could definitely see the Browns taking him, but I have the Steelers taking Shedeur Sanders at number 21. Could we see somebody trade in front of the Steelers? Absolutely. Could we see him fall even further? I doubt it. But I do believe they bring in Aaron Rodgers for a 1-year deal, and they sit Shedeur Sanders behind Aaron Rodgers, and then they go from there. That doesn't mean Shedeur Sanders won't start at some point this year, or it doesn't mean that he will start. He might sit behind Aaron Rodgers the entire year. But looking at how that's worked out for a lot of different quarterbacks sitting behind these veteran guys, I wouldn't hate that. So with the number 21 overall pick and my biggest reach probably in this entire mock draft, I do have the Steelers taking Shedeur Sanders, quarterback from Colorado. All right. Who do the Chargers need? They need wide receiver. There is no question about it. Everybody has them taking D-line or offensive line. I have them taking wide receiver. And another guy that's really slid down this draft here, because not a lot of teams, I could see a Colts taking him. I wouldn't be surprised if the Colts take him. But I have the Chargers taking wide receiver out of Arizona, Taratoa McMillan. I definitely said that wrong, so I do apologize if you like him. But Taratoa McMillan, I have him go number 22 to the Chargers to pair alongside Ladd McConkey. We saw how bad this offense was when Justin Herbert only had Lad McConkey to really focus in on during the playoff game. So I wouldn't be surprised if they bring in some help here. And he could be one of the top wide receivers in this draft. So they bring in a solid piece in order to continue, I guess, to build around Justin Herbert. Yeah, you could say that. All right, so here begins my I wouldn't exactly say wide receiver slide here, but I have the Green Bay Packers also taking wide receiver here. I have them taking Matthew Golden, wide receiver from Texas. Looking at it, they don't have a number one guy. So they need somebody to come in and establish himself as the number one guy. You're not going to see, I mean, you might have Jaden Wicks come in and try to be the number one guy. But looking at everywhere else, Romeo Doubs is questionable because he constantly deals with concussions. You also have Christian Watson is going to be out for the beginning of the season. So bringing in a piece like Matthew Golden isn't a horrible idea. So with the number 23 overall pick, I have the Green Bay Packers taking Matthew Golden to try to bring in try to build a number one wide receiver here in Green Bay. All right, next up we have the Minnesota Vikings, and I believe their biggest need is secondary and most importantly safety, especially with the departure of what's his face. I'm forgetting his name. Vikings safeties leave. Cameron Bynum, and bring in a new, not a new, but an old Harrison Smith. I wouldn't be surprised if they bring in some youth here, take the best possible player at their pick and at the position that they need, that being Malik Starks, safety out of Georgia. Malik Starks, I really hope that he falls to the Eagles, but right now I just don't see that happening, how everything shakes out. I wouldn't be surprised if we see them take corner here. Maybe even offensive line is a solid need that they should probably address. But sitting at where they're sitting, they probably take the best player available at the position that they need, that being Malik Starks, safety out of Georgia. Next up, we have the Texans, and if they do not address offensive line at all, they are trying to kill C.J. Stroud. I do have them taking the best possible offensive lineman available, although it could be a little bit of a stretch here, being Gray Zabel, offensive guard out of North Dakota State. He's 6'5", 310 pounds. I wouldn't be surprised if this is seen as a little bit of a reach, but if they don't address offensive line whatsoever, especially with prospects that could be better than the most throughout the rest of the draft, they are trying to purposely kill C.J. Stroud, and it's not even funny anymore. So give me Gray Zabel, offensive guard out of North Dakota State, going to the Texans to try to help improve this offensive line. Next up, we have the LA Rams, and their top position in need right now is linebacker. They don't really have a solid number one linebacker over there. So I would love to see them bring in a guy like Jahad Campbell to help shore up this defense. Although it's young, they can continue to build with even more young pieces around them and maybe take a shot at a Super Bowl if they can shore up this defense. So I have the LA Rams taking the best possible defensive player and arguably one of the best defensive players in the entire draft here at pick number 26, that being Jahad Campbell, linebacker out of Alabama. Ravens, they need a lot of defensive help. They need They probably should go after secondary. They should probably go after corner. Could they also go after defensive line, specifically edge? I wouldn't be surprised, but I have them taking probably the best possible corner, sitting at where they are, that being Jahdae Barron, corner out of Texas. I would love to see him. I would love to do more research on him, and a lot of these picks, the early picks that I do, I have a lot more film that I've watched on them, a lot more of their highlights, some of their lowlights as well. But I do feel like Barron could be the best possible player right now at a position of need that the Ravens have. So I have the Ravens taking corner Jahdae Browning at number 27, corner out of Texas. Alright, so this one is going to be weird, but hear me out. There have been a lot of heavy rumors that the Detroit Lions could trade with the Philadelphia Eagles for like a Bryce Huff. I do feel like... Oh boy, there goes that. Okay, well, I have the... Let's just run through it at this point, because it just reset my entire draft, and now I don't have it at all. Oh, now it's... Whoa. Alright. I have the Detroit Lions taking the best possible player available at their position. They need defensive line, so looking at edge players, they probably take Mike Green, edge out of Marshall. A lot of people have him going higher, but I feel like he hasn't proven himself quite yet, so I wouldn't be surprised if they try to tackle the edge position here to help out Aiden Hutchinson on the other side. The Commanders, what do they need? Commanders, they probably need to get younger, especially on defense. But I could also see them taking a swing at tight end here to bring in to be behind Zach Ertz, that being Colston Loveland, tight end out of Michigan. I wouldn't be surprised if they try to add some youth at a weapon position, that being tight end. So, with the number 29 overall pick, the Washington Commanders take Colston Loveland, tight end out of Michigan. Bills, they need defense. They need defensive line, especially if you saw how, especially with them seeing how Philly took down the Chiefs. They're going to need to get after Patrick Mahomes. So I wouldn't be surprised if they brought in a guy like Walter Nolan, defensive tackle out of Ole Miss, to continue to get after the quarterback and to help start to reboot or continue to reboot this defense and get younger as a whole. So with the number 30 overall pick, I have the Buffalo Bills taking Walter Nolan, defensive tackle out of Ole Miss. Chiefs need offensive line. They're next up. They need offensive line. It could be debated whether they need I think they go offensive tackle. They also need guard, but I have them taking offensive tackle here. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a guy like Cameron Williams, offensive tackle out of Texas, or Josh Corneley Jr., offensive tackle out of Oregon. I've seen more out of Josh Corneley Jr., offensive tackle out of Oregon. So with the number 31 overall pick, I feel like the Chiefs get offensive tackle with Josh Corneley Jr., offensive tackle out of Oregon, to help shore up this offensive line so Mahomes doesn't get killed like he did during the Super Bowl. So that's that. And with the last pick in the draft here, or at least in the first round, I have the Philadelphia Eagles. There are a few different positions of need. I feel like there's still, we need to go after safety or edge. There's a few positions on defense that need to get filled out. Edge depth wouldn't hurt sitting at where we are. Or safety depth as well. Obviously, the top two safeties are gone, but I feel like they still try to bring in one more safety, that being Xavier Watts, safety out of Notre Dame. Bring in some depth, bring in some competition for Sidney Brown at the starting safety 2 spot, or at the starting strong safety spot there. So he's a little bit undersized, 5'1", 204 pounds, but he's very versatile. He can play single high, he can play in the slot, and he just gets to the ball and creates turnovers. So I feel like the Eagles go with the safe pick here, that being Xavier Watts, safety out of Notre Dame. Alright, so that's going to be all for this episode. Thank you guys for sitting through me ranting and raving through another mock draft. We'll have one more before the draft, probably the week before the draft. We'll do one more, and that for sure will have more rumors knowing where people are going to be going. But until then, we won't see this format again. And for the next few weeks, we're just going to be covering smaller news and what I think teams could do moves-wise to try to improve, especially like the bottom of the barrel teams that I believe will ultimately finish last next season. So, with all that being said, I hope you guys have a good one. Remember to leave a like and subscribe. Follow us on Twitter. And with that being said, go Birds.